Welcome. This is tea ceremonies. I apologize if you came here to learn about actual tea, but we can get into ritualistic platform design. Gonna need my clicker. My name is Olaf Gradin. I'm a principal platform architect for Fiserv, and I'm sure many of you are wondering, I am actually 6'7". On the podium, I'm probably another 3 feet on that. In my spare time, fun fact, I do like to create costumes and dress up with my family. But more about Fiserv. So Fiserv is a financial services institution. We make a business around moving and managing money and information for millions. In fact, every year we process more than $75 trillion, which is a really big number. Hard for me to comprehend that. And this slide actually points out a lot of interesting facts, Fiserv by the numbers, but I think that $75 trillion really resonates with me, because what we're going to talk about today is actually so financial services is somewhat of a conservative industry. Fiserv is a leader in fintech, so we are pushing technology boundaries for the financial services industry. And as you might imagine, they don't take kindly to drastic changes to that platform that supports $75 trillion every year. So we have to be careful. But this talk is actually about two such drastic changes that I had the pleasure and honor to be a lead designer on. So we're going to go way back. In 2004, a couple of Windows guys got together and proposed a platform that would fundamentally change the technology on which all of our business had previously been built. So originally, we were working with mainframe systems, we were working with mid-range systems, and our distributed stack was built on Linux, Red Hat primarily. So Microsoft Windows Server 2003 didn't have a readily available home for them, but we made it work. So some of the things that we lacked actually were centralized management. So through Server 2003 and that entire Microsoft stack, we were able to demonstrate cohesive centralized management. We were also able to deliver, believe it or not, commodity pricing. At the time, a lot of our products were branching out and we were using a lot of very enterprise class heavy hitters in the field. And so you had to pay a good bit of money even though it was coming from an open source area. The Windows stack provided a lot of ways to merge those products inside of the platform. So .NET was built inside of the platform. IIS was part of the platform. SQL would cost you extra, but in those days, it wasn't very expensive for us to get into. Also, so those are things that the platform team needed, but in addition to that, the developers themselves needed things to move a little bit faster. The issue that we had at hand was that our operating systems weren't being deployed quick enough. We were down to network bandwidth problems. Some of our automation routines weren't fully automated, so there was still manual work being done. So we had kind of a slow, sluggish operating system deployment. So in Server 2003, we were able to change that. We switched to an image-based automated provisioning and configuration. It sped things up for us pretty drastically, and so we were able to deliver that faster time to market. In just 2 years, we did a pretty good job with all of this, by the way, because in 2 years, we were then able to get several business units on board in such a way that they declared for their entire business units that the go-forward development platform would be .NET for them. So that was pretty exciting for us. So we'll fast forward a little bit. 2016, I like to call this the PaaS era. So in 2016, the landscape had certainly changed for us. And in this scenario, it wasn't the platform team that was out looking for a platform to solve our problems. It was actually the developers who came to us and said, hey, we're kind of looking at this product called Pivotal Cloud Foundry, wondering if you have any interest in looking at it for us or with us. And they were looking at it for the promises of an even faster time to market and also DevOps. So as you all know, Pivotal Cloud Foundry delivered on the promise of faster time to market immensely. So they had some different desires within the platform. The platform team, we were able to deliver an OS pretty well. We understood this by this time. We were good at it. However, there are a lot of other elements to a platform delivery besides the network operating system There are VIPs, there are networks, there are storage, all these other systems that come into play. So we knew that we needed paths to solve the rest of this issue for us. The platform as a service solves the delivery question for us, and it did so in a way that was, I hesitate to say embarrassing, but frankly it kind of was. And the way that I put this to test was I produced this highly oversimplified demo, and I apologize for any pivotal people out here today. I created this demo to show some of our people where I took some HTML static code, wrote it into an app, and pushed it through a Nginx build pack. And everybody that I would show this to understood exactly what it took for us to deliver a product like this. And what they saw was, in old days, something that took us months to do, now I finished inside of a demo while I was talking 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less, maybe a lot less. So that was scary fast, right? And actually, culturally speaking, that was something that we had to consider within Fiserv, because now time to market is instantaneous, and we need to be even more careful about that, because again, the financial services industry is somewhat conservative. So the demo went pretty well, and actually we had a lot of other help in pushing this out there. Within 6 months, we actually had gone through research, we had gotten a budget together, and we did our first production delivery all in time for Christmas, which was great timing because we also had an application coming right alongside this, and together as partners we were able to get all of this done just in time. So there's no reason to introduce a platform into an organization without change, and change, of course, is risk. Which brings me to the first lessons learned that we gathered from this. This and all of our platform stories. So challenging the status quo. In 2004, when we did our first platform delivery, as I said, it fundamentally changed our technology. Well, all of the applications we had, basically nothing was going to work on the platform that we were proposing. So that seemed like something against the grain. But we were hedging our bets for sure. And we knew that it was providing a lot of value to the platform. And we knew that there would also be value to the development teams if they would stay and listen. One of the things that it gave us, of course, was a fresh approach. Anytime you're introducing a new platform, you're opening up the opportunity to start fresh. In some cases, that's probably really scary, and we're hesitant to do that. But if we think pragmatically about that, it allows us to take apart a problem and solve it in completely new ways, which can be very valuable for us. Also, with the additional management capabilities that we introduced to the platform, we were able to consistently demonstrate that we had this thing under control. And of course, we're IT, we're infrastructure, we're all about control, right? So we could demonstrate control that didn't hinder people as much, but still produced the same artifacts that they needed to see. So changing the status quo also, I mentioned before that DevOps was introduced in this. We were able to deliver things so much faster. We're a heavy ITIL shop. We are heavy on control. We're responsible to a lot of people for the things that we do in our data centers. So DevOps was certainly a risk, and one that, frankly, the IT people were not too sure about, but the business was interested in taking advantage of this and introducing it in small pockets so that we can figure out how to contain it, how to manage it. And so it's been 2 years since this time, and there are perhaps still some good discussions that come up about DevOps versus ITIL, DevOps versus change management and control and what we can do there. But there are so many more good things when we think about the actual customer, Fiserv's customers, that are undeniable. The fact that they can get their products delivered to them faster, and when there are issues, they can get those issues solved faster, undeniably better. So another one, leveraging the vendor. This perhaps goes without saying, and this is perhaps less an indication of your platform quality and more an indication of your vendor itself. But the idea here is that you should probably listen to the advice that your vendor has to give you, with caveats. So you listen to their advice. An example of this was we actually went out to Palo Alto and we visited with the pivotal team out there, and we got to see, as I like to put it, them eating their own dog food. So there were all these great ideas that they pitched to us about agile teams and pairing and scrums and all these great things. And so we took a team out there of engineers, maybe some developers, and we sat amongst them for a little while to see how this actually worked in their day-to-day business. And it was actually phenomenal. It was eye-opening, and I will say that it in fact changed the paradigms for our IT from there on out, and we are now adapting agile to work within infrastructure technology. So that was fantastic for us. It helped us a lot. They helped us further, in fact, by engaging our developers for us. So the developers were the ones who originally came to us to ask for this thing, and then we came full circle and said, okay, you asked, we're starting to deliver, but we need to understand if we're actually meeting your expectations. And Pivotal actually helped us go out and engage the developers on their terms and talk developer, and figure out exactly what they need and how we can provide it as an infrastructure team. So then listen to their advice, sure, but follow your own business cases. In the Microsoft realm, this was much longer ago, they had fantastic architecture reference diagrams. And they at the time were very mature and gave us lots of introspection as to how we should actually build these things and live within our data centers to supply all the features and capabilities that a Microsoft stack could give you. However, many of you may remember Microsoft was heavily embedded in the client desktop environment at the time. Still is, but they obviously have more server stuff going on now. So we were trying to take their desktop support systems and apply them to servers, which isn't an obvious fit, but it was one that in this case, the vendor said, maybe this isn't the best way to do this. And we said, well, it fits our use case and we think it can do it. So we're going to give it a try. So we did listen to their advice. We did build the systems as they said we should, but we went a little beyond that as for its application. Another aspect of that actually was that since they're building for desktop environments, they actually are thinking of tens of thousands of clients. And our core build out for a Windows platform in a given data center, just basic stuff, I think was 7 servers. So we weren't even a blip on their numbers as far as capacity planning goes. So one of these core implementations would have solved all of the data centers with those core build-outs in them. However, we're building for servers, we're building for availability, so it didn't matter so much what the capacity was, it mattered more about the fact that they were independently available data centers. So we had to duplicate this build-out in all of the data centers, and we had to build it in a way such that it was all very cohesive, it's very highly available, it's replicated, it was way overkill. But again, we built for availability. So speaking of the vendor, actually, we have to think of ourselves as vendors to our customers. And so working with your customers was a theme that came out of our platform design as well. So in a tea ceremony, it's more about the servitude to the guests than it is the tea itself. And there is no platform without customers. So we do have to treat our customers very well, and we do have to pay a lot of attention to what they need. The first thing that you do in doing this is you actually want to identify partners that you can work with. In our case, Pivotal helped with that some by engaging the developers, as I said before. But in the early days, we had to go out and see who was interested in learning .NET, because we had no .NET applications at the time. And we looked around and we found people, of course. There were pockets of developers that said, I've been reading up on this. I'd be really interested in learning more about that. I'm ready to adapt these services over to .NET and see if it'll work. So we engage together and figure out if we can make this platform work for the company. And we do it piece by piece. And in the end, we have a friend in the business that can help us solve this platform issue. After having gone through all of this, after Pivotal having helped getting our enablement started, we engaged some of our clients directly and got them to build products and deliver with the platform. After all of this, we also went a step further. We built a cloud enablement team. And this team, one of their jobs at least, is to go out and engage the Fiserv, the internal people, our customers, IT's customers, and help them with their products as they engage our more progressive platforms that we're building. So this is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy where we designed the platform and we built a team that can go out there and help get people on that platform to support it. So you kind of see where that's going, actually. So we have to be creative. And I think it was probably obvious in the Windows world we were doing things that were a little outside the norm, and so certainly we had to be creative in that environment. I don't know how many of you are familiar with System Center Configuration Manager. Anybody? Oh, we've got quite a few. Okay. So System Center Configuration Manager, cool product, right? You may remember SMS, once upon a time. That's where we began. And it was designed for desktops, as many of you know. And we used it solely for servers to manage configuration and provisioning of servers. So it required quite a bit of creativity because everything it does is based around client environments, and all the patterns that they would give you were based around how you deliver it to clients and how you manage clients and how you, at some point, how you manage mobiles. That was so far from what we did inside of our data centers. Windows automation as a whole was an entire creative endeavor for us. In those days, Windows 2003, PowerShell might have been a thing. I actually don't remember. It was not much of a thing if it was. So with automation in Windows, we had to come up with other ways to do things. We built C# applications to do things. We used VB Script. We used Windows Scripting Host. I used Batch, sorry, for anybody who's still working with those things. So we had to be very creative in how we did these things. I actually was called out one time. It was declared that Olaf shalt not use Batch language ever again, because I had built something that would actually go in and this was a cluster configuration script. And the script would go out and scan all the available disks that were being presented to this old cluster. And it would take a look at the sizes of them, and it would make some good guesstimates and say, well, that one's about 1 gig. That's probably your witness disk. We'll make that your witness disk. And then it would just assign letters to all the other ones. And the work that you had to do in Batch to make that happen was ridiculous. I don't know if any of you have ever done substring searches within Batch, but it is silly. So after that, everybody looked over it and said, okay, it's working, but never again. Don't do that. So within PCF, creativity still applies, but PCF is, with concourse pipelines, with the designs that they use, the methods, it is creativity incarnate, the way I feel. It enables you to use your own creativity because it offers you the platforms to consume it. So as I come up with ideas about what I want to do, it has readily available platforms for me to just insert those things. The whole notion of concourse is really helpful in managing that product, that platform. So you be creative, but you also need to know your own limits. And this is something we probably all get a little bit ahead of ourselves on. That Batch script was a good example of that. The PCF marketplace is a fantastic opportunity for developers because it enables readily accessible services for them to consume and present to their own applications, whether they be there just for maybe testing or in fact they're planned to be production deployments. They have that choice. So we were, of course, advised, our vendor, taking their advice, we're advised that these things are available. Some of these can be really helpful for your customers. Enable them, make them work. But we quickly learned, as many of you probably have as well, we quickly learned that just going in and enabling all the services for your developers to consume had some drawbacks for the platform team, poor platform team. I know, nobody is crying. But the platform team then had to manage updates for the platform as well as for all of the services that were tied to the platform. And in those days, at least, that was a long, serial, arduous process to get through it. So the more you added, the longer you waited for your platform updates to go through. And if you messed up anything along the way, well, you're going to have to fix that before you can get your actual platform update done. So this was an area where we knew our limitations. Our team was not equipped to handle this sufficiently, so we had to limit the services that we offered and make sure that we could actually still complete platform upgrades in a timely fashion. This gets to another interesting point. I want to work less. Why am I a sucker doing all this work over here? I need to be doing less of that. So obviously the first thing to be learned from this is that we want to automate everything. We want to get as much done as we can by the system so that I press a button and it happens and I can have a longer lunch break. That's the key driving force behind that, I'm sure. The PCF exemplified this again, so their designs, their pipeline integration is such that this is the standard mode of work. And we all really enjoyed that. We actually had kind of a funny term that we used for the platform. Whenever we went to do an update, oftentimes we did it at lunch, we would call it turtling. So we would just click the button and let it turtle through the update because it's going to sequentially and methodically go through the platform and do all of the things it needs to do to upgrade each and every piece of it. Worked great. We loved it. And we didn't have to do a whole lot with it. We didn't have to babysit it, per se. With Windows, it required a lot of creativity, as I said. And so the driving force there as well was to, of course, limit the amount of work that we were doing on the platform. There was manual work, and anytime we came across the manual work, we'd say, okay, is there a way, excluding batch, that I can get this done in our automation? And a lot of times there was. Sometimes there wasn't, but a lot of times there was. There were gaps. Automation has gaps. I'm sure you've all run into them before. When it comes to, in 2004, there were even physical systems, so clearly I'm going to have some gaps there. But even in IaaS, we may have some gaps that we have to deal with. PaaS changed all of that. The platform as a service changed some thoughts that we had historically maintained around this. And so in a short amount of time, we realized that there was actually kind of a difference between automation as we thought of it and infrastructure as code or configuration as code. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, this is actually a short list. This is a partial list of some steps that we would take to build out part of our core infrastructure. You can take pictures and use this if you want. So this will build you out a 2003 server and get you going. You'll be ready to go with this platform. But these were a number of steps that we had to follow when we built out a new data center and put our equipment in it. These steps couldn't be automated. Most of them had to deal with things like walking up to a KVM in a rack and opening a crash cart and punching in things, or sliding in a server in the right slots. Interesting things, right? There was no way to automate these features. But beyond that, we could automate the configuration of the servers. Once we got our core up, then things got rolling. It was a snowball after that. So we thought we were okay with that. But then we expanded to additional data centers. Then we expanded capacity, and then we started subdividing data centers. And we quickly realized that this model actually does slow us down, but more importantly, it leaves us in a somewhat inconsistent state. It's very difficult if I have any amount, documented or not, if I have manual effort that I'm using to maintain a consistent state with my infrastructure as I lay it down. So anytime you're doing a new data center, major releases, disaster recovery, resource extension of your base hardware, you're going to have to go through this. And this is where infrastructure as a code starts to shine. So we flip this thing around, this automation thing around a little bit. And instead of just thinking about how can I do a thing repeatably, I start to think about how can I abstract what I'm doing to any kind of data center, any kind of hardware. I want to be able to do as little as possible to deploy a new base infrastructure, or any infrastructure for that matter. And I need to be able to do it repeatedly, consistently. And so infrastructure as code reigns king on this. And as you probably are aware, the manifest idea that goes into Bosch covers this completely. It's very nice. So when I think about what infrastructure as code or configuration as code really is, I was trying to sum up kind of a nice sentence to encapsulate that ideal to me. And what I came up with was perhaps not the most eloquent, but basically take all these things that you do, whether it be on a day-to-day basis or in an emergency situation, and don't do it. That's infrastructure as a code, right? So I want to be able to take all of those things and put them into code where I am maybe changing some variables, and guess what? It doesn't even take me to do it now. I can pass it off to somebody else. That's really important. Maybe another person is doing it, or maybe it's just another process. And as long as I feed it in a couple of values, then everything else is taken care of. It very much simplifies this whole extension capability. So by way of example, when we implemented Pivotal Cloud Foundry, I said before it was roughly 6-month window. The last 4 weeks of that was actually the production deployment. And what's kind of interesting about that is that initially we built it out on some pretty old, outmoded hardware. It was basically free stuff we had sitting around. It did not resemble our production environment in the least. It was some skunksworth stuff that was sitting under desks. And in those last 4 weeks when we delivered to production, it was a different environment, networking, storage, firewalls, and it was different hardware that we deployed to. It had absolutely zero impact on our timing to deliver this product into production. It did not matter that the hardware was different. It did not matter that networking was different. Once everything was set up and ready for us, it was a push-button deployment of that system. That's exactly what we needed. So we saw that, and then you can see all of these little blips on the timeline here. We've now gone through 6 major releases, countless minor releases, to 8 different foundations in 4 data centers at this point in time. I think as of like last night, right? We may have finished some just recently. What's more is that they were all done idempotently. So every time one of these releases hit, it was a fresh start for our platform. When I think of the Windows 2003 servers that we had so long ago, those things persisted for years. The idea was always that they would be built in a way that they could be ephemeral, and if we need to change one, we just rebuild it. But it was much easier said than done without infrastructure as code. But in this environment, it's completely repaved every time we push these updates. So we've done a lot of work to figure out how to deploy this platform, how to configure it, how to build it, how to engage our customers. We need to make sure that we keep that up. We need to make sure that we are being a good T-host to the ceremony, because what a T-host would do in the ceremony is pay a lot of attention to detail. And so my Center of Excellence now is a way for me to demonstrate that I'm continuing to do that for eternity. And actually it reminds me a little bit of, so I'm married, full disclosure. And when I first met my wife, she actually said to me that what it takes to earn me, it takes to keep me. And so you might say that a Center of Excellence is a lot like a marriage. And I've been married for 22 years, so I think this is very applicable. So a Center of Excellence is like a marriage because it takes an investment, it takes a partnership, and it takes a lot of work, right, frankly. So I think that there's a lot of value in that. You've got to maintain what you've learned. You've got to evolve your talent. You've got to evolve your platform to have that Center of Excellence. So all of that leads me kind of to my final thoughts, which is what I've really created here, man. So the tea ceremony is kind of an analogy of a process that lends itself to a system, and the system is a community. We have a community of engineers, we have operators, we have developers, which are really providers and consumers, providers and customers. And all of this really represents a pretty strong community. So as long as the providers, as long as we are keeping in mind our customers' tenets, which you may remember the Agile Manifesto, then I think we're going to continue to build a platform that can live on for decades. The .NET platform that we built in 2004 continues to persist today, and we still continue to maintain a community around that. And now with PCF, we have enriched our community even further. We run user groups internally. We have lots of partnerships in the development group. We are now following agile practices within IT. We are meeting them at the same table of work. And I think that we are then building a better product ultimately for Fiserv. So that is actually a conclusion to my talk. I had too much coffee, so I apologize if I went a little faster than I expected. What I would ask you to do actually is to ensure that you've got the mobile this particular item scheduled in your mobile platform. That's the only way in which you'll get to rate this speech. That greatly helps me. Also, tomorrow I wanted to point out that we have another talk by Fiserv, From Inception to Production, Migrating .NET Apps to PCF. This will be a good one for you to follow too, especially if you're very interested in how we are now migrating these .NET apps into the PCF platform, which we are doing successfully. So, thank you.